Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz.
And I'm Brandis Friedman. On the show tonight, R. Kelly's Chicago trial is underway. We hear what jurors heard on both sides as both sides make their opening statements.
The choice in this election could not be clearer.
Illinois Democrats say it's between them and what they call a party of lunatics. We're live from the State Fair.
Highland Park calls for a ban on semi-automatic weapons. Our Spotlight Politics team breaks down the measure.
The Inflation Reduction Act caps insulin prices, but not for everyone. How the new law could affect your health care.
Me being able to sit here for another 8 to 9 more months, I felt personally it wouldn't hurt.
Earning a college degree behind bars, and not just any degree. Find out why Northwestern is investing in its prison education program.
This center will help our international community to continue their profession of choice and to follow their dreams.
Addressing the healthcare worker shortage under an innovative new program.
We've given out over 25,000 storybooks.
And meet a woman on a mission to heal and empower kids through books. But first, some of today's top stories. Mayor Lori Lightfoot can travel to campaign events in her city vehicle accompanied by an aide and her security detail, all paid for by taxpayers without violating the city's ethics ordinance. The Chicago Board of Ethics issued the unanimous advisory opinion determining, quote, a mayor's full and varied schedule requires that they be readily available to attend the many meetings, functions, events, and emergencies of all kinds that require attention and handling. As the highest-ranking official in the city, a mayor is on call every hour of the day and night. Lightfoot's campaign spokesperson declined to comment on the opinion to WTTW News. The mayor has spoken frequently about the number of, quote, serious and significant threats and harassment she and her family have faced since she was elected in 2019. Opening statements today at the Chicago trial of R. Kelly. The Chicago-born R&B singer stands accused of multiple child pornography-related charges, as well as conspiracy to obstruct justice and enticing a minor to engage in criminal sexual activity. We'll have more on day one of the trial in just a moment. And the Chicago Sky began its quest to become the first back-to-back WNBA champions in 20 years. The defending champs host the number 7 seed New York Liberty tonight at Wintrust Arena after finishing the regular season with a franchise record 26 wins. The first 2 games of the best-of-3 series are in Chicago, with Game 3 in New York if necessary. Up next, more details from inside the courtroom on day 1 of R. Kelly's federal trial in Chicago. Stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
R. Kelly and 2 of his business associates worked for years to keep the R&B superstar's dark side hidden from the public, while he sexually abused multiple underage girls, taped it, and paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep it covered up. That's what federal prosecutors alleged today in the first day of Kelly's Chicago trial. WTTW News reporter Matt Masterson was there and joins us now with more. Matt, what did we hear from the prosecutors today in their opening statements?
So federal prosecutors spoke for about 45 minutes today, and they detailed how Kelly and his 2 co-defendants, Milton Brown and Darrell McDavid, they did work for years to conceal that dark side from the public. They alleged that he had produced 4 sexually graphic VHS tapes with himself and a minor in the 1990s. And then he allegedly paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep those videos concealed from the public. And then he later allegedly hid that girl from law enforcement when he faced similar charges to these in 2008 in a Cook County trial where she was ultimately acquitted. Prosecutors also talked about how he is also accused of engaging with criminal sex acts with multiple other women as well.
And this is one of many state and federal trials Kelly has faced. He's been convicted in some of those other ones. What did the defendant's attorneys have to say today?
So Kelly's attorney, Jennifer Bonjean, sought to discredit these accusers and these government witnesses, saying that some of them are testifying under immunity deals that will keep them from any possible prosecution themselves. She said that any claims made against Kelly stem from people she referred to as liars and extortionists, and she went so far as to actually call Kelly a victim himself in this case. But his co-defendants took a bit of a different strategy. They pointed the finger at Kelly a little bit. Attorneys for Brown and McDavid both seemed to imply that they just didn't know that this video with this girl was legitimate. They were told that it was a fake, a fraudulent thing, and that when they were trying to conceal it, they were only trying to help him with his defense in his 2008 trial.
And you kind of got into this a little bit, Matt, but remind us what's different about this trial than the recent conviction in New York, where a jury found him guilty on 9 counts of sex trafficking and racketeering.
Right. In the New York case, Kelly was convicted basically of using his fame to recruit underage girls to engage in illegal sex acts with him. So while this case is similar, it's different charges in that he's accused now of producing and owning child pornography videos, and allegedly he had made efforts to try to obstruct justice during that 2008 trial where he was acquitted.
All right, Matt Masterson, thanks for joining us, and we know you'll be following this trial all week. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Matt's full story on our website, WTTW.com/news. And now, Brandis, we toss it back to you.
Paris, the November election is just 82 days away. Not that we're counting or anything. The candidates certainly are, as both parties are gearing up with the annual State Fair pre-election rallies. Tomorrow is Republican Day at the State Fair. Today, Governor's Day. Our Amanda Vinicky is there, and she joins us now from right outside the fairground's main gate. Amanda.
Brandis, fairgoers filing in right now might be going to ride the Ferris wheel or giant slide, perhaps grab a funnel cake, or go to see this evening's big concert that is a TLC and Shaggy show. Now, top tier ticket prices for that cost $36, but Democrats who were part of the rally here on the fairgrounds today got their own free private show. He's had songs on the Billboard charts, and he's a member of the Grand Ole Opry. Governor J.B. Pritzker, a billionaire, laughed when reporters today asked how much it cost for the campaign to bring in Young for that private show. But really, for most Democrats, they weren't watching Young anyway. He was really just background noise. They were here for a different show, the political one.
Are you ready for the fight? Are you ready for the fight, Democrats? Let's go get them!
Democrats hold all of Illinois' statewide offices. They also have supermajorities in the Illinois legislature, and they are looking to keep it that way come November, and actually even expanding their stronghold. A lot of talk about winning local contests in the suburbs of Chicago, like making DuPage County Blue Page, as Governor Pritzker put it earlier today. That was at another packed rally and meeting at the Springfield Convention Center.
Pro-labor, pro-choice, pro-voting rights, pro-civil rights candidates up and down the Democratic ballot. And the Republicans aren't going to make it easy. The lunatic fringe has taken over their party, and they'll say anything, do anything, destroy anything to get elected.
For a better America and a better future.
In contrast, he described the audience that was made up of party faithful who are willing to volunteer for campaigns, knock on doors, and also to pay the $75 admission price, or political groups actually paid a lot more than that, up to nearly $60,000 for a table of 10. Pritzker described them as members of the, quote, coalition of the sane. That sort of attack on Republicans was a common theme.
The Republican Party that Lincoln founded is gone, and it's replaced by candidates up and down the ballot who want to tear this country apart and undermine everything that is fundamental to the democracy that President Lincoln lived and died to protect. And if you look at who's winning these primaries on the Republican side, they are crazy as hell, and they are saying and doing the craziest stuff ever imaginable. And my fear, if these individuals get elected, we're going to be seeing January 6th on a weekly basis.
Janulius included his opponent, GOP nominee for Secretary of State, State Representative Dan Brady, among them, even though Brady is actually known as a moderate. He has no connection to the January 6th riot, and he has not challenged the 2020 presidential results. Most attacks, though, weren't focused on Brady. Instead, they were focused on Pritzker's challenger, that is Republican nominee for governor, current state senator Darren Bailey.
This man is not fit to do the real job of leading all Illinoisans. My fellow Democrats, there's simply too much at stake, and we must be unified and laser focused on defeating Darren Bailey's far-right extremist agenda.
Stratton said on day one, if Bailey is elected, he would seek to roll back Illinois residents' rights, like the state law that protects access to abortion.
And he has the unmitigated gall to think that the women of Illinois are going to just sit back, sit down, and stay silent. So, let me ask all the amazing Democratic women of Illinois that I see all across this room, and anyone who stands with us, are we going to let Darren Bailey and his extreme MAGA ideology get anywhere near the governor's office? Of course not.
There is no question that Democrats are unified against all Republicans, and Bailey in particular, even if there is some discord within Democratic ranks. You have some members of the party upset that a few weeks ago, Pritzker worked to unseat Congresswoman Robin Kelly as head of the Democratic Party of Illinois in favor of Pritzker's pick, State Representative Lisa Hernandez.
We Democrats must connect with voters too often left out and left unspoken to. Together, we can do this by raising the resources necessary to launch Spanish language ads and new digital ad strategies targeting Black and brown communities.
Republicans, by the way, did try to get a word in today during the fair rally. A plane flew overhead with a banner that read "Fire J.B. Pritzker." But really, tomorrow is Republicans' chance when they have their day at the fair and their meeting and rally, and we will be there. For now, though, back to you.
Amanda, thanks. I hope you're getting some good snacks while you're there. And now to Paris and the sky-high cost of insulin. Paris.
Brandis, President Joe Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law this week, which, among other things, puts a $35 cap on insulin prices. But that only applies to Medicare recipients, leaving the rest of Americans who depend on the life-saving medication to continue paying huge prices. Joining us to discuss this situation are Joanna Buscemi, Associate Professor of Psychology at DePaul University. She is a health psychologist who focuses on health inequity across disease presentations, including diabetes. And Timothy Clausen, Associate Professor of Economics at Loyola University, Chicago. Welcome both of you to Chicago tonight. Joanna Buscemi, first of all, remind us how important insulin is to the millions of folks that have to regulate diabetes.
It's extremely important. It's life-saving, and it's not a luxury. It's a necessity. It's a hormone, and without it, patients with diabetes get very sick or die. So it's essential.
And Timothy Clausen, fill us in on how expensive out-of-pocket costs have gotten for those that have insurance for insulin.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of variety across insurance plans in terms of the out-of-pocket costs for those needing insulin. But surely on Medicare, the evidence indicates about an average monthly cost of about $55 a month for a lot of those on Medicare needing it. So looking at least a $20 on average for the average individual on Medicare needing insulin reduction in their monthly out-of-pocket costs. So this is a significant out-of-pocket reduction. Certainly those without insurance could face costs as high as $300 a month. So I think the variety of insurance plans we have, those on high deductible private insurance plans, could face significantly high costs too for the out-of-pocket cost for insulin.
All right, so this law, obviously good news for those that receive Medicare, $35 cap. But Joanna Buscemi, how many millions of Americans pay out of pocket, have private insurance that pay these exorbitantly high rates are still out there?
That's a great question. There's between 4 and 5 million other Americans with diabetes who are not Medicare beneficiaries, who have to pay out of pocket or they have high premiums. And so while this is a huge step in the right direction, there's still some improvements to be made, particularly to cap the cost of insulin for those covered by private insurance companies.
And Tim Clausen, as I understand, the cost of producing a single vial of insulin ranges from about $2 to $6, but then the monthly costs for patients are in the hundreds sometimes. Why are prices so expensive?
Well, that's a whole different segment. That's a long one on how, in terms of how prescription drug prices are set. But certainly, you know, the necessity, as she pointed out, of insulin for diabetics drives demand for the product. It's an essential thing for those who need it. And so I typically use insulin as an example of something that is inelastically demanded or where patients are not very price sensitive. So that lack of price sensitivity allows them to raise prices to the levels that we've seen. I think, you know, insurance also distorts prices quite a bit. I think that's an important point to make, is that when we have insurance, we're not aware of the full price of things. And so the insurance company is paying something for these drugs, and our out-of-pocket costs are only a portion of that. So certainly the lack of transparency in drug pricing, the essential nature of insulin, and the limited market for it. There's only 3 main producers of insulin that really kind of, they've done a good job of preventing entry into the market. All those things add up to their ability to charge the kind of prices that we see for insulin.
And Joanna Buscemi, you've done a lot of research into how diabetes impacts disproportionately communities of color, low-income communities. How are low-income folks able to afford these necessary costs every month for insulin?
They're not. They're just not. And oftentimes they are trying to find insulin on social media sites. They are making decisions of whether or not they can afford their insulin that month or buy groceries for their families. And so it's a huge problem that exacerbates inequities more broadly.
And Tim Clausen, I mean, you mentioned that a lot of these prices are due to market forces. Is there anything else beyond legislation that can bring these down for more people who aren't on Medicare?
You know, I think potentially the entry of biosimilars into the market would be, you know, generic entry has reduced the prices of a lot of highly innovative drugs. I mean, there have been massive innovations in the pharma market that have provided tremendous benefit to patients. And so I think the opportunity for some sort of similar to generic entry to allow more competition. The branded manufacturers have been offering some pseudo-generic products at slightly lower prices, but I think kind of more robust entry into the market would be one way to reduce prices somewhat. I think one thing to point out is the concern I have is just reducing the out-of-pocket cost to patients. If the insurers aren't able to negotiate lower prices, that's just going to result in higher premiums for these insurance products. And so, you know, it's helpful to the patients initially, but if premiums go up to compensate for these lower out-of-pocket costs, I'm not sure what as much a benefit as we might hope there is happening.
So it sounds like the law of unintended consequences there. Joanna Buscemi, what about you? What other options are there to reduce these costs for folks, especially low-income folks, which, as you said, are perhaps turning to more risky options to get their treatment?
I think the diabetes community really wants insulin to be free for all Americans. And I know that some people might think that's a pipe dream, or maybe it's really far in our future, but lots of other countries provide insulin free of cost. And I think that would be the best option. There's some legislation that's been introduced recently. For example, the Improving Needed Safeguards for Users of Life-Saving Insulin Now Act, or the Insulin Act, that focuses on capping the cost of insulin across patients with diabetes, not just Medicare patients. So that's one possibility. And the other thing I think we need to focus on a little bit more is capping the cost of insulin itself and not just focusing on the copay, because sometimes that also brings about new challenges for patients with diabetes.
And Tim Clausen, you know, as this bill was being negotiated and legislated, the provision to keep caps on insulin for private insurers was taken out. Is that safe to say that big pharma insurance companies really don't want those caps in there?
I mean, a lot of states have actually initiated caps on insulin prices. Illinois introduced one last year to cap monthly spend at $100, and then it turned out that a lot of people's insurance provided them lower than $100 out-of-pocket costs. So some of it would be how much bite would a change like that have in terms of the privately insured market. Generic drugs on private insurance are basically $1 or $4 a script. So certainly for those with generous private insurance, such a cap might not have much effect. But obviously for the uninsured, for those with high deductible health plans, which the market has moved strongly toward in the last decade, A lot of people face pretty high out-of-pocket costs up front when in the pre-deductible or in the deductible phase of their insurance, and so that certainly would have had some effect for those who needed insulin in the privately insured market. But how big that effect is harder to measure.
All right, a lot to still iron out here for diabetes patients. And our thanks to Joanna Buscemi and Timothy Clausen. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Earning a college degree from a top 10 school is only attainable for a small percentage of the population, many of whom had access to high-quality secondary educations. It might sound even more far-fetched for men and women serving time in prison, but it's reality for some inmates turned college students at Stateville Correctional Center. And Brandis Friedman, you had a chance to visit Stateville this week to learn more. What did you find out?
That's right, Paris. I did visit Stateville earlier this week. Of course, a maximum security prison in Will County. And while many colleges and universities will offer classes for credit to prison inmates, Northwestern University says it's the only top 10 school that grants degrees to prisoners. And next spring, these students will be the first to earn their bachelor's degrees from Northwestern while in prison. Past the prison walls and guard towers, constant reminders of freedom lost, 16 men sit in a purple-paneled classroom discussing an article by legendary activist and author Angela Davis. It's called The Meaning of Freedom. The students are engaged.
Is there anyone in the room who's already read The New Jim Crow?
Eager to learn.
In order to imagine ourselves as citizens of the globe.
And more present than many college students, who these days are easily distracted by phones and day-to-day college life.
What it is that African descendants were set free from.
One of them is 43-year-old Andre Patterson, Dre for short. Though he grew up in Evanston, attending Northwestern University as a student seemed unattainable.
Kind of like the shining beacon on the hill, so to speak, but far away.
He did get a job on campus as a dishwasher and busboy, but says he fell into the wrong crowd off campus.
They came and arrested me at work and took me through this gauntlet of students and employees handcuffed, and I used that as an example of the possibility of me now becoming a Northwestern student is kind of like a full circle moment for me.
Though he's 20 years into his 60-year sentence for murder, he's taking every opportunity he can to learn. Next year, he and his cohort will receive bachelor's degrees from Northwestern's School of Professional Studies through the university's prison education program.
Extensive empirical work that shows the benefits specifically of getting a degree while you're incarcerated.
Nationwide, data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics indicates the overall rate of recidivism, returning to crime, post-incarceration is 67%. With an associate's degree, that rate drops to 14%. And with a bachelor's degree, it dips to less than 6%. Students first have to apply and be accepted. They take classes several times a week, sometimes giving up recreation time or other privileges in order to do so. And just like college, there are papers to complete, but no computer to complete them on.
There are all sorts of challenges. They don't have access to the internet. They don't have access to websites. Everything is handwritten. If they have a question from a professor, if they don't get a chance to ask it in class in real time, they have to wait a week. They can't email the professor. Getting a college degree is hard. Getting a college degree from Northwestern is hard. Getting a college degree from Northwestern while you're incarcerated is nothing short of heroic.
Northwestern professor Jennifer Lackey, who founded and runs the program, says the rigor in this classroom is no different than on campus. The school provides additional supports like tutors and study halls to overcome what in many cases might not have been a solid secondary education. What the university can't control is time.
The psychological challenge is really the main challenge because you have no control really over your study time. Where and when you can sit down and study, it's like you got to grab snatches of solitude, snatches of, comfortability.
For 37-year-old Bernard McKinley, a sentence reduction means he could have petitioned for early release back in February, but he chose not to.
This is my safe place. And when I leave that prison cell and that prison cell house and come into that classroom, I feel like I'm around my brothers. And being around my brothers, I'm able to be me.
Today's class is political philosophy, and it's clear McKinley is among fellow philosophers.
Prison is more psychological than physical. I've acquired so much at this point where to sacrifice maybe another 8 to 10 more months wouldn't hurt. And to finish my education here, when I do go in front of that parole board, I will go in front of that parole board with something to be proud about.
But it'll be a long time before some of McKinley's classmates see the outside of Stateville Prison, if at all. Lackey argues there is still value in providing those inmates an education.
We have a number of students who have natural life, and while we hope for each one of our students that there will be a legal pathway for them to go home one day, if it doesn't turn out that way, we want to support them here. We hope to hire some of them to be tutors here in our program, to be teaching assistants.
Andre Patterson, who grew up in the shadow of Northwestern, does not consider earning his degree his redemption.
Redemption would be me taking everything I learned from the program and now applying it to my community. You see what I'm saying? What can I do to give back where I've taken away?
And Andre, who you just heard from, says he intends to write with his degree, books, short stories, maybe his own autobiography. And Bernard McKinley, now he goes before the Illinois Prisoner Review Board in April for a hearing on his petition for early release. And he's studying to take the LSAT. He wants to head to law school to become a civil rights attorney once he's released from prison in Paris. We should also note there is a cohort of women at Logan Correctional Facility. That one is, of course, downstate.
And so what about the students that leave prison? Can they continue their education if they're in the middle of, say, getting a bachelor's degree?
So Jennifer Lackey, who runs that program, she says they don't close the door on attending school on campus. Those students are able to apply, but the handful of students who are on the outside, they choose to zoom into their classrooms, partly because they want to stick with their cohort, their classmates, but also because getting to campus for those classes is hard. There are additional challenges that they're also managing. Housing, job, food insecurity, they can all stack up for folks on the outside post-incarceration, and that makes prioritizing college that much harder.
And Brandis, how is this program funded?
So we should be clear, this is not a taxpayer-funded education. Northwestern University funds the program with some grant support. But next year, the federal Second Chance Pell Program restarts. That will provide federal financial aid to incarcerated individuals, and it opens the door for far more colleges and universities to begin providing prison education programs. Paris.
All right, Brandis, nice reporting, and good luck to all those students. And we're back with more Chicago Tonight right after this.
We've made it.
Justice Jackson's appointment to the Supreme Court provides a beacon of hope.
Black women are underrepresented. We still rise. We still show up for one another.
It's us investing in the next generation and giving them something to enrich the next generation with.
And still to come on Chicago Tonight, a new program aims to fill the health care shortage by helping those with medical degrees obtained abroad re-enter the medical field here in Illinois.
Are you ready for the fight, Democrats? Let's go get them!
Our Spotlight Politics team examines efforts to reunify the state's Democratic Party after a bitter intra-party battle. Plus, a woman's passion to create pop-up libraries and help heal young people from trauma. We share her story. But first, some more of today's top stories. The new school year is almost upon us, and the Illinois Department of Revenue is reminding parents, guardians, and educators that some of their expenses may qualify for a tax break. The Department of Revenue says parents and legal guardians of full-time K-12 students can get a 25% tax credit of up to $750 for educational expenses such as tuition, books, and lab fees. Teachers can claim a tax credit of up to $250 for expenditures on classroom materials. And you can find out more about both tax credits at tax.illinois.gov. A 43-year-old man has died after being pulled from the water at Diversey Harbor early this morning. The Chicago Fire Department and the Police Department's Marine Unit responded to the scene shortly after 5 a.m. The man was with a group of people at the harbor when he went into the water and failed to resurface. Now, he was taken to Illinois Masonic Hospital in critical condition and was later pronounced dead. According to statistics maintained by the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project, prior to today's incident, 33 people had drowned in Lake Michigan to this point this year. A new noise plan for O'Hare Airport could be coming soon. The O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission today voted to approve a new program to mitigate the noise impact of flights on local residents. The new Fly Quiet plan has 6 runway configurations that would alternate weeks from the north airfield to the south airfield and air traffic from east to west to balance the impact of nighttime noise. The commission represents 43 communities in Chicago, suburban Cook, and DuPage counties. It has spent 7 years developing the new plan after the original Fly Quiet program was rendered obsolete by O'Hare modernization. The plan will now be put before the Federal Aviation Administration for further review. And now, Brandis, we toss it back to you.
Paris, thank you. The COVID pandemic combined with the Great Resignation has led to a healthcare worker shortage across the country. A new initiative aims to address that. The program is helping immigrants who have professional healthcare degrees obtained abroad re-enter the medical field in Illinois. The Welcome Back initiative is in partnership with the City Colleges of Chicago and the Chicago Bilingual Nurse Consortium. Joining us with details are Dr. Jose Ramon Fernandez Peña, Executive Director and founder of the National Welcome Back Initiative, Janice Janoski, President of Richard J. Daley College, and Carmen Velasquez, founder of the Chicago Bilingual Nurse Consortium and Alivio Health Center. Thanks to all three of you for joining us. Dr. Fernandez Peña, let's start with you, please. What are some of the challenges that immigrants who have professional health care degrees in their home countries, what are the challenges that they face when they are attempting to practice that profession here in the U.S.?
The first challenge they face is the lack of command of the English language. So that's something that we need to address early on so they can actually prepare for the exams they have to take and pass in order to obtain licenses. The second challenge is the actual preparation for the licensing process. And that takes months, sometimes years of study. In some cases, it takes taking additional coursework to complement the courses they took abroad. The cost of those processes is also a challenge. The issue that most of the participants we see are working 2, if not 3 jobs, and they may not have the time or the money to be able to take up some of those jobs, take away from those jobs, and in order to prepare for the licensure exams. The issue of accrediting foreign credentials is always challenging. It's not always easy to obtain transcripts from countries that are, for example, the Ukraine, going through a horrible war. Some countries actually do never release the transcripts of immigrants or outside leads, and without that evidence of education, it's very difficult to be able to relicense in the profession you had in your country of origin or of training.
And Carmen Velasquez, you've worked with helping immigrants with healthcare degrees obtain licenses, practice in Illinois. What are some of the steps that you all take to overcome those hurdles and to support people through the process?
One of the things that we do is it's not only the credentialing process, but it's also the support that they need as human beings. For example, when they begin that process, they're going to be away from their husband, their children. The husband will have to take some responsibilities that he never took before. But I think the most important aspect of all of this are the challenges that Dr. Jose Ramon stated. We also know that there's a frustration that here they are nurses and they're working as babysitters, they're working as Uber drivers, they're working in restaurants, washing dishes even, waiting on tables. And there's nothing wrong with those professions, but they are nurses. And because of our lack of shortage of the workforce, we want them to become productive healthcare providers in Illinois and Chicago.
Of course, yeah, it sounds like they're overqualified for some of the jobs that they end up taking on. Janice Janoski, what is the role of Daley College in this partnership and helping folks get over these hurdles?
We at Richard J. Daley College have a mission, just like the mission of the City Colleges of Chicago, focusing on access, inclusion, and equity. And through access, inclusion, and equity, that means all. And as we have immigrants come to join us in the state of Illinois, as we have refugees come to join us in the state of Illinois, as well as asylum seekers, all joining us in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. This program, through the Welcome Back Center, the Chicago Welcome Back Center, is aligned directly with the mission of Richard J. Daley College and the City Colleges of Chicago, focusing on access for all, inclusion, and equity.
And I misspoke. I called you Janice earlier. Your name is Janine.
Oh,
My apologies.
Yeah, Brandis, I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's Janine. That's correct.
Of course. So, Dr. Fernandez-Peña, you founded the Welcome Back Center in 2001. What's been its impact since then?
There's been a tremendous impact over the past 21 years as we have been able to return thousands of qualified health professionals into the U.S. health workforce. And in so doing, we are actually enabling the health sector to provide services in a culturally and linguistically appropriate manner to the communities that are typically left out from services. So that's a massive contribution, I believe. Also, the individuals that were once waiting tables and cleaning toilets are now making reasonable wages. They are paying more taxes into the economy. They're making contributions back into the system. They're able to send their kids perhaps to better school or to extracurricular activities. They become engaged citizens when they're not worrying right and left about what's going to happen to them. Will they be able to afford their housing, their food? Will they be able to continue to support their family in Mexico or in Namibia? So the benefits are not only for the individual, but they're actually spread to the community at large.
And to that end, Carmen Velasquez, you know, obviously we're talking about the benefits to the professionals and the ripple effect that has, but the importance of having the importance to the healthcare community, of course, by getting more bilingual professionals licensed in the state.
Well, I believe that in 1989, when we opened the Alivio Medical Center, the recognition of not having the appropriate bilingual, bicultural healthcare providers, we now have a workforce that will build a trust between the patient and the nurse and the institution, because many of our persons in our communities do not have a trust relationship with the institutions that provide health. These individuals coming from other countries who are other nurses, I think one of the things that we have found is that their love for their profession, the care that they have for the people that are sick.
And Janine Janoski, what impact do you think a partnership like this could have on the shortage of healthcare workers that we've been talking about for the last 2.5 years?
Absolutely. What we know from the pandemic, we knew it before, but it became abundantly clear during the pandemic that we have a shortage of workforce, both in terms of nursing as well as in other healthcare professions. Individuals within our area, Chicago, within the state of Illinois, having a license from another country, but not being able to utilize that license and practice their first chosen field is an opportunity that we all see through the Welcome Back Center to help them return to their chosen profession and make an impact in our community, but by providing health care for individuals within our community that are very much focused on English and Spanish as a first language, Polish as a first language, and other languages.
And Dr. Fernandez-Peña, we've got about 30 seconds left, but what other resources will this initiative offer beyond the support with certification?
The support in the process of trying to obtain the license is critical. The guidance and what potholes not to fall into, how to avoid mistakes that people make without knowing, the direction to the appropriate assets, the educational resources of the college, for example, or other community-based services, as Carmen mentioned. We may refer them to childcare or to housing assistance or to other kinds of services that they may be eligible for and without which they would not be able to pursue their dreams.
Okay, that's a good place to leave it. My thanks to Dr. Jose Ramon Fernandez-Peña, Carmen Velasquez, and President Janine Janoski for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, our Spotlight Politics team with a behind-the-scenes look at Illinois State Fair politics. Stay with us. A closer look at the politics underlying the Illinois State Fair's Democrat and Governor's Days, all that and much more in this week's Spotlight Politics. Joining us now are Heather Sharon and Paris Schutz. We hope to be joined by Amanda Vinicky shortly. So, as we heard earlier from Amanda Vinicky, today is Governor's Day at the State Fair. Heather, is it fair to say that Governor Pritzker now firmly in control of the party with State Representative Lisa Hernandez as the chair of the state party?
He certainly is. He is the party's largest donor. He's at the top of the ticket. In November, he's calling the shots, and the success of Democrats will really rise and fall on his performance. He's all in with Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch, and they're calling the shots, and they're going to get the races that they wanted to run.
So, Paris, after this blistering battle over the control of the Democratic Party of Illinois, there's an attempt at unity now. How's unity going?
I don't think all the fences are quite mended yet. I mean, you saw that Congresswoman Robin Kelly, who was the former chair of the party after Madigan stepped down, she did not attend today. She put out a statement saying she wants Democrats to win all across the state, but she's just not going to be at this breakfast because, this was very bitter. J.B. Pritzker came in and was very vocal and very public about wanting to remove her as head of the Democratic Party and support his person, who is there now, Lisa Hernandez. So I don't think this is the kind of thing that spills out and affects voting or elections so much, but certainly there's still some bruises within the party that have to be healed.
So tomorrow, as Amanda mentioned earlier, it's GOP Day at the fair. The Republican nominee for governor, Darren Bailey, is going to try and deflect from the latest social media controversy. This time, it's his running mate's explosive postings that have surfaced. One tweet reads, quote, "Install DNA locks on all public bathrooms and locker rooms. Stick your finger in the lock and your DNA will open the appropriate door. Common sense solution to a complicated issue. We are not interchangeable. Do you think Bruce Jenner has true joy?" And of course, Bruce Jenner, reference to famous transgender woman who now goes by the name of Caitlyn. Paris Trussell, of course, was referring to transgender Republican activist Caitlyn Jenner. So tell us about the latest social media controversy.
Well, there are those social media postings. Ms. Trussell has also had some unfortunate social media posts about LGBTQ. There's also been some posts uncovered from Darren Bailey's wife, Cindy Bailey, who is an official with Bailey's campaign, talking about kind of stop the steal-oriented postings and some more unfortunate comments about LGBTQ. And then there's also Darren Bailey's comments that were unearthed about saying that abortion is worse than the Holocaust. Clearly, there are some people, or maybe an army of people, going through some very old social media postings and leaking them out here. But I remember that, 2014, that's the last time a Republican won statewide, Bruce Rauner, and he said famously, "I don't have a social agenda. I don't have a social agenda." It was all economics, and he really didn't. He didn't talk about a single social issue. Clearly, Darren Bailey's not going to be able to get away with that because the social issues, the very far-right social issues, are a big part of his agenda, and they do seem to be pretty extreme for the mainstream of Illinois voters.
In Paris, that last tweet from Stephanie Trussell showed that it was from 2020. Heather, Bailey can't put these to rest. Is this a Pritzker strategy to just roll out more bad news every week or so?
Absolutely. It is 100% Governor Pritzker's strategy, and we heard him make that case at the fair today, calling for a, quote, coalition of the sane to fight the lunatic fringe, of course, he says is represented by Darren Bailey and Stephanie Trussell. That is the ground that Governor Pritzker wants to fight this election, and these old social media posts are helping him do that.
So meanwhile, Darren Bailey has made a hard pivot on Trump, telling a reporter that Mike Pence, this is a quote, Mike Pence followed the constitutional process and, quote, Joe Biden is the duly elected president. Amanda, welcome back. Let's bring you in. He's made the comments as a supporter and friend is charged in the Capitol attack. Is that what's behind his momentous shift?
Well, so actually, Brenda, to be clear, it wasn't Bailey himself that said that about Pence and that Biden is the duly elected president. It was the campaign spokesperson. So that's sort of different because actually it's been a while since reporters have had the opportunity to have Bailey himself answer questions. We'll certainly be trying to do that tomorrow. So it's a different sort of dance that Bailey has been playing when he has apologized, for example, as Paris referenced earlier, the comparison of abortion to the Holocaust, apologizing, and then saying, hey, wait, actually, I got the go-ahead from rabbis, and they didn't have any problem with that remark. So we really need to hear, I think, from Bailey himself on this. And yes, it might also be that he is able to change track some because he's out of the primary. Cleared that. And while he certainly is not making any sort of major pivot when it comes to his social agenda, again, that was just talked about, he no longer has to solely appeal to the GOP base. So it could be a change there. But
I should add, in the primary, he kind of left himself some wiggle room, because on this question he would say, I think there's fraud, I think there was fraud. But I don't think, and I didn't watch all of his rallies, obviously, so I don't know this 100%. I don't think he ever really said the election was stolen. So seems to have been a strategy in the primary to kind of have it both ways, you know, kind of appeal to the base that wants to believe Donald Trump, but then, you know, thinking about the general election, and now his campaign spokesman can come out and say what he said about Biden.
Now, Paris, there's also the fact that Bailey has held multiple campaign events with the same gun store where the accused Highland Park mass murderer purchased his gun. Is this an unfortunate coincidence, or is he leaning in on gun rights?
Well, by all appearances here, this is an unfortunate coincidence. I mean, the campaign event referenced here at this store in Villa Park happened well before the July 4th shooting, and I think there's some discrepancy from the store. And, you know, he says here in this tweet, you know, they're sponsoring a Bailey for Governor gun raffle. The store is like, well, we weren't really officially sponsoring them. But again, like with the social issues, you know, Bailey has been very outspoken about his views on gun rights. They're completely the opposite of Pritzker. He doesn't want restrictions on guns, and he doesn't want a ban on assault weapons. So and again, those are out of the mainstream. I mean, if you believe public opinion polling in the country, those are out of touch with the mainstream public opinion polling. So they're going to be out of touch with Illinois, and he can't run from those positions. He can't really dress them up. So, like the social issues, the gun positions are going to be part of his campaign.
And to that issue, Highland Park is passing a measure that calls for bans on semi-automatic weapons, high-capacity magazines, and body armor. Naperville following with a ban on commercial sales of assault rifles. So, Heather, tell us about these measures.
Well, Highland Park already has a ban on the sale of assault rifles. Of course, that did not stop the 4th of July shooting, and Naperville has followed suit, although it's an open question whether that will be an effective way to reduce gun violence in Naperville, because Chicago, as we know, most of the guns used in crimes in Chicago flow into Chicago, which is very strict gun laws, from other states that have more lax gun control rules. So this is really, both are largely symbolic, calling on the state to ban assault rifles, which could have an impact because it would reduce sales in Illinois, although of course it wouldn't have any impact in states like Indiana, where there are lots of gun stores and lots of gun sales. So I think this is just, both votes were just an indication of the shift in politics after Uvalde, after the Highland Park shooting, where now most even purple areas like Naperville, DuPage County, once a stronghold of the Illinois Republican Party, are really moving to the left on gun control as people say these mass shootings are just intolerable.
Amanda, there was a hearing today about an emergency rule that Governor Pritzker and the state police filed to try and fix a loophole. Tell us what it is they're trying to correct here.
So this has to do with the issue where the shooter of that Highland Park mass shooting, the alleged shooter anyway, had a family member. There was a clear and present danger report filed by Highland Park Police with the Illinois State Police, and then subsequently the state police nonetheless issued a gun license to Robert Cremo Jr. And so that is what this is, the emergency rule intended to fix, really tightening that up, because state police say they had to issue a FOID card because at the time that clear and present danger report, the warning, this guy shouldn't be able to have access to a gun, he hadn't officially applied for a gun. But Republicans really pushing back at that, saying that an emergency rule may not even be necessary had, they say, state police followed the rules. They say police, again, sort of talking out of both sides of their mouth and saying they once did both look at that clear and present danger report filed by the Highland Park Police, but then also that they had to disregard it. So Republicans saying, you can't have it both ways. This is on you.
Paris, there was going to be a special legislative session on both guns and another one for abortion. What's happening there?
It's really hard to know what's happening. I mean, the latest you've heard from the governor is he's put together these working groups of legislators, Democratic legislators, to come up with legislation, perhaps banning assault rifles in the state, and then other legislation having to do with abortion. You would think in election year, as Democrats go out and campaign before November, they want to go out and talk about things that they have done to further protect women who want to have abortions or protect the state from guns. But at this point, there's no date to have a special session to come in, and so perhaps they're not all agreeing on what these packages are going to look like. Democrats have not been a monolith in the past on gun issues, so it's hard to know.
And Amanda, was that you trying to jump in? We've got 10 seconds.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Just wanted to say that it does not appear as if there is any special session anytime soon. There are those working groups, but this gets in the difficult part where you have J.B. Pritzker wanting to be the leader of the party. When you're calling for an assault weapons ban, then it is folks that I talk to say on him to get that party together and to come up with something that can pass. They have
Obviously
the numbers.
Complicated. That's Spotlight. Thanks, team. Amanda Vinicky, Heather Sharon, and Paris Schutz. Up next, a mission to help heal young people from trauma with pop-up libraries. But first, a look at the weather.
Literature is used to mold young minds, but a nonprofit is hoping it goes beyond just that. A local woman started an organization using books to help children heal from trauma. Chicago Tonight's Joanna Hernandez recently told us about this local and international effort. Here's another look.
How many of you love books? Do you guys have a favorite book?
Meet Sina Jacob. She is the founder of the nonprofit Bookwala.
Wait, what? Bookwala.
More than a dozen kids recently gathered at a local Boys and Girls Club for a storytelling session. Jacob founded the organization back in 2009 when she says she began to question her life purpose and started to visit orphanages around the world.
We traveled to Indonesia, India, Jamaica, Sri Lanka, passed out storybooks donated by kids here in the United States, which is fantastic. And the reaction that I saw on the ground in orphanages and for children, again, of trauma, the way they were looking with this faraway look, the way they were excited about the pop-up books, I just knew that I couldn't go back to the old way of life, my corporate life.
That's when the Magic Crate program came to life. Small pop-up libraries placed in schools and orphanages.
But I found that these books and the messages in these stories, which all children need to hear, the hero's journey, the hero's struggle, and overcoming something, coming out stronger, a happier world. It's so very critical, and especially for children who have lived with fear or insecurities or any type of trauma at all. And so reading is one of those major outlets where they too can relive that journey, overcome it, and realize that they could create a better world for themselves.
What started globally has slowly grown locally. Magic Crate can now be found in Chicago, filled with a variety of books for kids to take.
So we have it in corner stores, barbershops, related affordable homes.
I got this book on More Than a Princess, and because she's pretty and she's like a princess, but she's more than a princess.
Mother and teacher Nancy Unzeta says the Magic Crates encourage kids to explore different topics.
I believe the crates like this are going to open that question into parents. Children are going to come home with these books at home and ask for more books. They're going to ask parents to come into the program, and parents are going to be remembered of the importance of taking a break and sitting down with your child, bonding and reading.
For Jacob, her mission is driven from the passion she has of empowering kids to heal and dream.
Need help with this word.
No child should ever cry at night, right? No child should ever cry. And we want to see them smile and laugh and all those things. And if we can give a simple gift like this and have that much power and magic, why not do it?
Jacob says her goal for Bookwala is to keep expanding in Chicago.
I truly believe that If these books were not here for me, I would not be here today. I believe these stories saved my life, and I know it has the power to save other children's lives.
So go ahead and grab anything you wish.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Joanna Hernandez.
And just this week, a new Magic Crate location opened in Rogers Park at the related affordable property, North Point. And you can learn more about Bookwalla on our website. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that's our show for this Wednesday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night live at 7. We hear from members of the Illinois GOP on the State Fair's Republican Day.
And home to 2 university campuses and a 46-acre nature preserve, we visit the North Park community for this week's In Your Neighborhood, right here, where we are right now. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz.
It's in our neighborhood, and I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm whose attorneys embrace a culture of philanthropy and service by volunteering their time, expertise, and guidance to help others in the greater Chicago community.